The next speaker, Sabdiyo Dido Bashuna. She's Head of Gender and Inclusiveness at Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA. She is a senior professional with a demonstrated track record of working with market-based solutions to spur pro-poor economic development. Thanks a lot, ma'am, for participating in our Women in Agriculture Web Summit, and floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Deepak, and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuned into. As has been introduced, my name is Sabdiyo Dido. I'm the head of gender and inclusion in AGRA. AGRA is the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa. We are the main continental partnership that is advancing inclusive ag transformation for Africa. We are looking at how smallholder farming systems could transition from subsistence towards commercial enterprises that can sustain families, give income, and of course decent living to the rural communities that we serve. We work with governments within the countries where we are, but also across the continent. This is also to work collaboratively with government to set up the enabling environment that is going to nurture growth, develop the necessary infrastructure, and support smallholder farmers, women and youth to be able to make the transition that is necessary to have decent living of agriculture. We work a lot with private sector partners. We have a huge partnership network across the globe, actually, and we are certainly looking to deploy more and more resources, investment, capital to Africa's agriculture. We do hold the premier agriculture convening that is called AGRF, the Africa Green Revolution Forum. And this is a platform that brings all the different stakeholders together to have a dialogue on Africa's agricultural transformation. And there's one coming up soon. We have a launch on the 7th of June for this season, this year's AGRF. So please join us so that you can also hear and follow debate on how agriculture in Africa is transforming and where the pain points are still in terms of where the continent wants to be. So back to the presentation for this afternoon. Again, thank you very much to Niraj and Deepak for reaching out to us. In fact, the person who was supposed to be speaking is my good friend Vanessa Adams, but she's not, she's traveling, so she was unable to take this slot. So I'm happy to jump in and represent her and also represent her work. So at AGRA, of course, we are about agriculture transformation. And what I have done is I've just put together a couple of slides just to give you a sense of what we do broadly, but in particular, how we look at the issues of women in ag and gender in ag. And that is an area of responsibility, of course, for me at AGRA. So if you'll allow me, I'll just share a few slides, and then from there we can have the discussion.
Sure, please share your screen. You can do that. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, okay, good. So let me just put it on slideshow, and so this slide actually just explains AGRA's strategic framework, which is essentially these 3 levels of work that we are engaged in. We are working with the smallholder production cluster, looking at how they can access the different resources and services they need, the inputs and the capabilities they need to be more productive, to be more profitable enterprises, to transition towards more commercial enterprises from this very, very subsistence level that they are in. And of course, we work with the private sector, we work with governments. This is just a summary of what I've just given. Now, back to the gender in ag. I think we all know the statistics. Again, I'm really not going to go into rationalizing why this is important, but this is something that is also very, very important. In Africa, of course, there are a number of other issues that constrain agricultural productivity. There's climatic variability, there's the capability of the farmers, considering that there's need to continuously adapt technologies that are relevant for the time, that are relevant for the changes in climate, that adapt, for example, to the different needs and circumstances of both male and female farmers. So there's this continuous change that is envisaged, that is important. But if people do not have the same level of resources, and when I talk about people here, I'm talking about, for example, smallholder farmers, both male and female, then this really becomes creates an equal a situation where a certain group of people, and this is, for example, women, will have less access to the resources they need, and they will have less productivity. Now, of course, what this is very, very defeatist in the sense that we would like to empower the farming communities. We would like to empower farmers, but we already know that there's this group of actors, this group of producers, this group of workers that inherently produce less because of the gender constraints or construct that they find themselves in. So I think the performance gaps in productivity of between 20 to 30%, the performance gap in enterprises of up to 34% in sub-Saharan Africa, this is something that is so, so huge, and we have to do it. We have to bridge this gender gap in productivity and gender gap in profitability of small enterprises. Now, in Africa, most of the women are actually in very, very small enterprises. A number of them are very informal and very small, very tiny. They cannot access the kind of services that is needed to grow their business. So this, of course, compounded is what leads to this productivity gap, profitability gap that we are talking about. We do appreciate that the gender norms and the social restrictions, the policy barriers, regulatory impediments, especially when it comes to issues around financing and credit, we know all these in the end inhibit women's performance. This is what we are addressing in AGRA. So, of course, the limited access to inputs, this is just a summary slide of what I have just shared, so I'm not going to go into it. So we look at our intervention revolves around 4 aspects. So one is to ensure that women access productive assets so that they can be more productive. And we do this through our last mile services. You probably have read about our extension approach that is called the village-based advisor approach, and the local agro-dealer agents that we have promoted, we have supported to really increase the outreach. And what we have seen here, very, very good examples of how this has resulted. For example, in Rwanda, the distance between farms to agro-dealers and seed, for example, for seed access, reduced from 15 kilometers to 5 kilometers. That is so, so significant for women because we know that they are constrained by a number of societal and gender barriers. Mobility is an issue, safety and security is an issue. So this reduction of the distance to these input services, we have seen how it has impacted on the productivity on the farm. So these are some of the ways that we are addressing this. We are looking at enterprises in agriculture, women enterprises in agriculture, and I will speak to you very, very shortly about an initiative that we have put together that is addressing women entrepreneurship in agriculture, and that is something that we are going to speak to shortly. We're talking about women and markets and trade. We have the markets and trade part, rather the more lucrative part of agricultural value chain has been reserved for men. So the question is, how do we bring women also into this to help them to compete and to compete effectively, to take their businesses from these local levels to a more to high value marketplace. And of course, the issue of voice and advocacy, because we are addressing gender issues, this is very important. We're looking at policies that are going to incentivize women. We are looking at structures that create representation for women in leadership. We are looking to create networks and support around women. So just allow me to skip that because this is just showing our outreach in the various indicators that I mentioned earlier. And I jump now to the Value for Her initiative that AGRA is leading. And this is a continental initiative around women's agri-entrepreneurship, and it's across the continent. It's actually a flagship initiative across the continent. We are looking at the main purpose as to why we push this out onto the market. One is to change the service landscape to businesses. We know that access to business resources and services is a big constraint. So we push this so that it can alter the terms of those services and alter them in favor also of gender. You know, we're talking about altering the terms of service in relation to prices, crowding in and all that. But now we also would like to alter it in relation to gender so that we can increase the performance of these agri-enterprises that are led by women. We are looking at, we work very, very closely with very many partners to build voice and agency and empowerment. And of course, in the end, we are looking at economic equity. Now we are leveraging a digital platform. Again, this makes it relevant for this particular conversation. We are using a digital platform that brings all these women companies across the continent together to connect them to one another and to amplify their voice, but at the same time help them access the services. So this platform is structured like this. The value proposition, the offer from this platform is fivefold. So the first one is around what we call a women to women pillar. So this pillar brings women across the continents together so that they can network with one another, they can chat, they can interact, they can make different groups, they can make social groups, you know, they can discuss their own things around empowering one another, you know, just sort of encouraging one another. We know how important social capital is for women. The second one is around women to market. This is again the pillar that helps them access high value markets. I spoke to that. It's very important because they not only earn income, but they also learn and they build their confidence in the process as they advance the other levels of the value chain. We're talking about women to know-how. We know how they come in from a very low education levels. They come in from a very low exposure because they're within households. So the know-how is looking at both technical, business management skills, production management skills, and so on. And then the fourth pillar is around finance, one of the age-old challenges that women face. The issue around collateral, of course, how do you access collateral-free financing because most of them don't have land or other assets to leverage for this. And then the fifth one is around women to technology. And this is in fact a pillar, the latest pillar that came on board, and we are trying to develop this further to see how women can access technology and capital and use, you know, for example, we are talking about processing technology, we are talking about mechanization, you know, to reduce drudgery. We are talking about access to services that are already sort of digitized. And this is very, very crucial too, because women have they have very limited time. So efficiency is key. So one of the know-how programs that we have rolled out is called Arise. We rolled this out in the context of women entrepreneurship and recovery from COVID. We know COVID disproportionately affected women. So there is a training program, it's online. And in fact, we have the next one coming up on July 15. So again, my call is for you to join. but this is really one of the pillars of capacity building for women. The Amplifying Women's Voice one, particularly the agency, the Women to Women Network in part. Again, here across the continent, we've done a number of events, advocacy events, featuring different topics. It's around access to finance, access to markets, different regulatory regimes in different countries. And very recently, we hosted a UN Food Systems Independent Dialogue on women's entrepreneurship in agriculture. We actually led that. I was the convener. So again, here we have really increased the space for women. Right now, what we need to do is then build out those pillars so that they just access the financing they need, they access the markets they need, and they should be able to grow their businesses. So for Value for Her, for the women companies part, there is a criteria, and the criteria is that the businesses must have existed for 3 years, having at least an annual turnover of $20,000 and above, and it has to be women-owned. So that is the criteria. Value for Her has about 1,200 women companies at the moment, and that is growing. And we are present in 39 countries in Africa. So AGRA is, of course, involved in a series of other ag-tech work, for example, the use of AI and satellite data to connect premium of farmers to insurance, weather insurance, for example, reaching the last mile through technology. We have the chatbot pilot for extension services via SMS. We are looking at mechanization, access through these digital services, for example, Trotro Tractor in Ghana, Hello Tractor in Kenya, ETC in Agro, and of course we are working right now with the Cropin to support digitalization of extension services to reach about 3 million farmers. So in brief, this is what I wanted to share for this session, and I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for very informative presentation and the great work AGRA is doing. I would request if you can just stop sharing your screen so that viewers can have a your video coming in.
Sorry, are you saying that I take out the presentation? I will do that.
Yes, stop screening that. Yeah, so that actually when you're speaking, right, so that's we can have better connect. So again, congratulations for the great work you are doing. And I've always been I'll say big fan of AGRA and the way AGRA is promoting digitization of agriculture in Africa, which I believe is a very important pillar going forward if we really want Africa to gain its, I'll say that fair share of global trade in agriculture. So my first question to you would be when you are doing multiple pilots, what are the challenges you face in scaling up those pilots to the level where actually a large number of farmers can be impacted?
Yeah. So yes, indeed. The pilots by very nature are innovations that you try in one particular context. And the challenge, of course, of taking a pilot initiative from one context to another is enormous, in the sense that you have to understand the socioeconomic circumstances on the other side, socioeconomic gender circumstances in the other country, and it varies, because gender is very socioeconomic, cultural, religious, attributes that actually bring this manifestation that we are talking about, that brings exclusion for women. So the challenge is, for every community, you have to come in, you have to understand them, you have to earn their trust before you can even start to talk about these things. So it's a lengthy process. And in a global world where we are run by projects, that becomes a challenge. So this is one of the challenges that I have seen. And what we have done especially in this particular initiative I talked to you about, the Valley for Her, is we decided to go for the women that have already succeeded, the ones that have already gone beyond, you know, all these social cultural restrictions that are at a very local micro level. They are those that have already broken through this system, and they're already trading within the region, within the country. Some are even actually trading regionally. This is the group that we have gone for. And we use this group to plow back to the lower group that is very, very hard to reach. So this is the kind of linkages that we are creating. And through this, we've been able to scale initiatives like this one. And it has been really very, very useful and very instrumental in taking this forward.
My second question would be, like, you know, as you are rightly connecting women in agriculture who are typically on the agribusiness side, and with them, definitely there would be impact on the women who are doing the farming on the field. Do you see that coming with more solutions targeted towards women farmers on ground?
Yes, yes. So and I listened to the speaker earlier, and there's certainly value in having a women-to-women connection, because especially for that initial interface, you know, initial transfer of technology and inspiration, women-to-women connections work for that. That initial entry is very, very important. That is why, for example, extension agents that are females better reach female farmers, because there is, at the local level, there are all these social, you know, cultural dynamics. When you have a male extension agent coming to talk to a female extension farmer, sorry. So there are dynamics there that are very sensitive and culturally even not acceptable depending on the communities. So to make that initial entry, that women to women is important. But once the women start to rise up, and once they start to connect, and once they start to grow beyond that household, you know, that household dynamic, gender dynamic, and once they start to feature within the community, then it is important for them to in a way compete or get exposure to male entrepreneurs or male farmers who are doing something similar, because then it helps to set the pace for them. They see themselves as having grown a bit from within the women folk, but also they need a comparator, they need a challenger. So at that level, I think it's very important to have male competitors. It's in literature, it's mostly, and in the context of value chains, it's called a crossover. Starting, for example, within value chains that are largely led by women, and once they start to excel there, for them to continue to excel, you have to expose them to competition, and that competition comes from the other gender. So this is really how we are also slowly creating the space, first of all, for women. And once they are comfortable enough, once they have capacity, then start to expose them to a much bigger competition. So that's how we look at it.
Super awesome. I believe that is the way forward, because Africa is having its own context, and each country is having its own nuances. Whether you are talking about Ethiopia and Ghana, or whether you're talking about Kenya and even Tanzania, next door neighbors, they have very different socio-political structures. So that's very important part of it. Now that brings me to another question that actually, like, you know, when we talk about always Africa, there is a huge possibility of sustainable agriculture, because fortunately now, but maybe a decade back, it would have been said, unfortunately, the green revolution has not impacted, right, all the countries in Africa with a similar level. So a country like Madagascar, countries like Tanzania, where there is a huge possibility of value chains, which could be organic or could be regenerative or agroforestry. Do you have programs or any focus going forward to promote these ideas?
Yes, absolutely. So our next strategy, which is actually right now in design, is going to move into what we call sustainable farming. And we will be looking at all these different aspects, looking at the aspects of course, climate change is really is a big trigger for us, because if smallholder farmers do not adapt to climate change, do not have technologies, and do not have the knowledge on this, they will run out. They will soon run out of productive processes. This is certainly one. But we also do recognize that it's very important for us to take care of and to sustain the productive base. So the soil health, we are looking at the landscape restoration and management, and we are looking at policies that are going to ensure that these practices are entrenched. Of course, at the end, it's very important for smallholder farmers to still derive value, to derive income, because in the end, we are addressing food and nutrition security, but also environmental sustainability. So our strategy going forward has already filtered all these aspects into it, and is going to be a huge focus going forward.
I strongly believe that is very important as well, because in my interaction with cotton farmers of Ghana, or coffee farmers in Ethiopia, or vanilla or pepper farmers in Madagascar, we are already seeing the impact of climate change already, when they used to harvest 3 times a week to now they're harvesting 1 time a week. So all those productivity losses we are already seeing because of climate change. And I believe your initiative would be very big step and a welcome step for the farmers in Africa. And as I said, I'm a big fan of AGRA's work, and the great things you are doing is very well appreciated, and look forward to have more engaging interactions. And as a parting question, the last question for you, what would be your comment or statement for those young women who want to get into agriculture? Generally, I ask it with a global perspective, but I believe Africa is having a special place. So I would say, what is your message to the African women who want to be in agriculture?
Yes, my message to them is come on board, come on board. There's enormous opportunity here, especially for the younger females who are educated. They can use technology, they can access information on markets, and they can access information on different products, they can access information on climate. Then this is the place to be, because they can, in Africa, there's still a lot of land that is available. So there's a chance to start right. I mean, when I say start right, I'm saying that there's enormous opportunity to do anything that one is passionate about. So this is my call to them.
Super awesome. Thanks a lot, Sabdiyo, for spending time with us and helping us empower the women in agriculture. And thanks for sharing your insights and the great work AGRA is doing. And look forward to have you again in our future sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.